Welcome everybody to another edition of The Hurry Up. I'm your host, Adam. Let's get into this. So, I've seen on Twitter and a lot of different avenues of social media that people want to establish the team before the quarterback. Let's punt on the quarterback and build our team. What guy was established before that? You name it to me. I saw a stupid Twitter post about Peyton Manning and Patrick Mahomes and Joe Montana, these guys, and do you need a big-time team to start? Those guys started on those teams. Let's go to Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning had a shitty team in 1998. They traded Marshall Faulk the following year. They didn't have an offensive line. You know who made him better? Peyton Manning. Why are the Chiefs always fighting for the playoffs? Let me guess. It's because of Patrick Mahomes. Now, there are great players like Tyreek Hill that can go off in other teams and still do great things. But let's not establish, there's no Travis Kelce without Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce is not a Hall of Famer without Patrick Mahomes. Jerry Rice is not a Hall of Famer without Joe Montana. And yes, there are teams that are bereft of talent. And yes, maybe you shouldn't start a quarterback there. You don't have to start the guy. But don't sit here and say, well, you can punt on the quarterback position because of a few anomalies in the damn world. By the way, Patrick Mahomes sat for a year. People forget about that. People want to forget about that. You can still take your quarterback in the first round and sit him for a year and build your team out. Because last time I checked, free agency starts before the draft. Last time I checked, this isn't the NBA. You get 7 draft picks, okay? So you can build your team out. You don't just sit there. People making it seem like the people who want a new quarterback and for the Giants don't think they don't see the problem with the offensive line. We say the offensive line stinks. You do realize that Tommy DeVito, and I don't mean to use the Giants, but Tommy DeVito was pressured 47 times. 47% of the time on his dropbacks. He wasn't sacked once. Once! His offensive line was a sieve, and yet he overcame it. That's what good quarterbacks do. That's why you get a good quarterback, because they can overcome this shit. And don't tell me about, getting a quarterback in the late round. You know why you get a quarterback in the late round? Because you're trying to develop him. Guess what? The New England Patriots did that in 2014 with Jimmy Garoppolo. They drafted him in the second round because Tom Brady had just played 14 years. They wanted to get a guy in here to groom that when in, say, year whatever, Tom was going to retire. Obviously, Tom didn't do it, but that's what they did. That's what smart organizations do. They even did it in Tampa Bay with Kyle Trask. Now, Kyle Trask is not the answer, but they did it, right? They did it in Seattle. They brought in Matt Flynn, and then they drafted Russell Wilson. They already had a guy there, so they took a flyer on a backup quarterback because he was in the third round. Same thing with Jalen Hurts. These guys didn't anticipate them being starters and being that good. And oh, by the way, to say that a guy is not a good quarterback is only as good as his pieces, well, guess what? Those pieces are only as good as that quarterback. Because there's a lot of guys, there's anomalies around the league, right? But if you look across the league, most of the guys who are talented players have a decent guy throwing in the ball. Look at Odell Beckham Jr. Do we even realize that he played for the Browns? He didn't have great seasons with the Browns, not the same way he did with the Giants, with the Rams, and now with the Ravens. I wonder what those 3 teams had in common. It's hard to put my finger on it. Oh yeah, established quarterbacks. You can get quarterbacks all over the place. Remember, Lamar Jackson was drafted. They had Joe Flacco on the roster. Okay? You can do this. Look at the teams. Don't just poo-poo teams and throw guys out and say, well, we can get quarterbacks whenever. We don't need to. We can build this team up. There's been a ton of busts. You know why receivers have a smaller bust rate than quarterbacks? It's because they have 6 of them on each team. So you can draft as many as you want because you have ample room to get guys in there. In the quarterback room, nobody carries more than 4 quarterbacks going into the preseason and the offseason. Nobody. So you can't keep spending premium positions on that spot. Does it mean you don't draft guys? No. You got guys that are starters that you can draft behind. You think the Los Angeles Chargers were like a nice guy back there? Look what the Raiders did. The Raiders drafted Aiden O'Connell as to be a backup and to groom to maybe be something. They don't know what he is. There's a lot of 4th-round picks that don't amount to nothing. Ryan Nassib, Kyle Lauletta, to name a few. Davis Webb was a 3rd-round pick. He didn't do nothing. We can go through all the bust trades. We can do it. We can go tit for tat. The problem is the quarterback is the most prominent position in all of sports. The only other position that is probably as high as the quarterback position but doesn't get the same clout is the goalie in hockey. Because the goalie in hockey is the man. You have a great goalie, and you have an okay team, you can overcome a lot of your deficiencies. You have a terrible goalie, and even on a good team you have a terrible goalie, you ain't doing nothing. You got a terrible quarterback, you ain't doing nothing. And the problem is, the real issue is that Roger Goodell has made this league so watered down that mediocre talent is looking like great talent. And then when greatness happens, we always give factors. Oh, well, Joe Montana wasn't that great. No, he wasn't. Yes, he was. He was that great. Peyton Manning was that great. He made those guys better. Drew Brees made those guys better. Mind you, Drew Brees, again, a second-round pick. They didn't know he was going to be that good. It does matter, okay? And I think we take a lot of it away from these position players because we want to be right more than actually looking at it. If you look at the history of the league, right? Look at the Hall of Famers. A lot of them, there's guys that come out of nowhere, undrafted rookie free agents here and there that have played above X's and O's. John Randall's one of them, right? But if you look across the league, when people make the draft is an investment in guys. Most of the time, you're trying to keep the guys that you draft, right? But in those slots, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, etc., those slots matter. And the reason why the Giants haven't kicked Daniel Jones to the curb long ago is because he was a sixth overall pick, and they don't want to look like an idiot for getting rid of a sixth round pick. They're an idiot now for keeping that blowhard, but that's a story for another day. Which I was right about, by the way. Just wanted to point that out. So my point is, if you sit here and wait and try to wait to make your team perfect, you're going to miss on a quarterback. But Adam, what about Brock Purdy? Brock Purdy was drafted as a flyer pick that they took because they didn't want to miss it. They had this guy rated high. They didn't want him to go to any other team or have any other choice as an undrafted free agent, so they drafted him so they had his rights. And they didn't know he was going to be this good. You can't tell me that they knew he was going to be this good. Now he's in a system which everyone says, hey, you can put anybody in there and do well. Well, they did that, and it's not working. It didn't work out for those players. They had Jimmy Garoppolo in that same system with these same guys, and he didn't do anything. They traded him. And now Brock Purdy, who's having a good season, and no, it's not just the talent that he has. You have to put the talent in a good spot. Case in point, right? Tommy DeVito. Everyone's talking about Wan'Dale Robinson and the long run. Well, if Tommy DeVito puts that ball in a bad spot where Wan'Dale has to turn and make a move or make an adjustment that he's not really ready for, he doesn't hit him in stride, you don't go up the sideline like that. It does matter. All right, quarterback play does matter. Yes, you can get a quarterback anywhere. You can wait if you want. But the teams that don't wait are the teams that take a guy like Will Levis. That's what they do. They're like, you know what? We have a quarterback. We're still going to get one anyways to upgrade the backup position and possibly be a starter when this guy is available. That's what you do. Smart teams do that. They don't wait and say, ooh, wait, let me have a perfect environment. That's like, I'm going to wait for the perfect moment to ask or do this or do that. Not every moment's going to be perfect. And not every team is perfect. Let me tell you that, okay? Every team is not perfect, all right? We think they are. But not everybody are the Cowboys where you have a Hall of Fame line. Besides Jeff Saturday, how many guys can you name on that offensive line for the Indianapolis Colts? Did Eli Manning have a Hall of Fame line in 2011? No, his line was ranked one of the worst in football that year. You know what he did? Only had an MVP season. Why? Because he overcame the deficiencies of his offensive line. So it does matter. Sitting here punting a quarterback, your argument is better made saying maybe you draft a guy and develop him. That's what a better argument is. But to say to people that, Joe Montana had a team established is completely wrong. Saying that Peyton Manning had a complete team established is completely wrong. These guys did not have those teams. They found that their quarterback was good, and they acquired talent and brought him in. Jalen Hurts, people riding him off into the sunset after his first year starting. They came in, he came back, put in work, they brought in guys, and he's made those guys better. A.J. Brown has had better seasons with Jalen Hurts than he's had with Ryan Tannehill. I'm just saying, talent matters. Don't take away the talent of these quarterbacks and the position, and don't let anybody scare you off because their narrative is they want to keep some guy who's a bum like Daniel Jones. Oh, well, if you give Daniel Jones stinks. And we've seen that across the board. You give guys talent and they stink. Blake Bortles, drafted. He went to the AFC Championship game. He stinks. He was gone a few years later. Jared Goff was written out of town. My point is, don't let anybody scare you off a court. And if the quarterback guy stinks, guess what? You draft another one. Who cares? They draft receivers all the time. Receivers, D linemen, they're all bust rates. The only one we care about so much is the quarterback. Ooh, but everyone's scared to draft one. Ooh, because of some stupid myth about it'll set your quarterback back 5 years. It won't. You know why it won't? Because the salary cap for the rookie salaries don't cripple teams anymore. So you can get at a guy sooner. You don't got to give a guy a fifth-year option. He's only here 3, maybe 4 years before you can get rid of him if you want. Facts. I'm tired of this narrative where we sit here and want to punt and wait for everything to be built up before the quarterback. Because then you're missing out on guys. Because you're afraid to draft because you weren't ready. You know this is the NFL? The NFL changes week to week, year to year. The teams that have their quarterbacks most likely are in the playoffs every friggin' year. We're talking about the Herberts of the world, the Burrows of the world. Those guys are injured yet, and their teams are struggling right now. Look at the Chargers struggling without Herbert. And that's mostly on coaching. Now, if you want to tell me coaching matters, then that's a different story. If you want to tell me situation matters, then that's a different story. But don't just sit here and paint this narrative like, well, you have to build up the offensive line and do this. No. You get your quarterback, you bring in pieces in the offseason. Look at the Texans. Texans are case in point. They drafted a quarterback number 2 overall. They didn't even draft him number 2 overall. They drafted him 3, actually. Willie Anderson Jr. was number 2. And because they had the back-to-back picks, they picked C.J. Stroud. And now they have a team because that guy makes everybody and elevates their play. So for every, Kirk Cousins, who, by the way, was drafted after Robert Griffin III, had no establishment and went out and made his own way. Dak Prescott, who, by the way, was drafted to be the backup to Tony Romo. Russell Wilson, who was being the backup to Matt Flynn, okay? These are anomalies. Those teams were being built already. Before that, these guys came in and they lucked out. Try taking a 4th-round pick and just throwing him out there. It's probably not going to be the same as throwing C.J. Stroud out there, who has acumen. We want to diminish this talent because we want to have a narrative. I'm tired of that narrative, and the people know who I'm talking about and who they are. If you're thinking that you drafted a lineman over a quarterback when you don't have a quarterback, you're doing it wrong. And people, BPA. Fuck BPA. You know why? Because Marvin Harrison Jr. is not going to do nothing if the ball can't go to him. Case in point, Garrett Wilson. He's great talent, but he's not the guy we want him to be because guess what? His quarterbacks don't get him the ball. He's an immense talent. Immense. We got to start to really reestablishing things. And as for the Giant fans, you already know. If Tommy DeVito, an undrafted rookie free agent, can play behind this porous offensive line and still win games, I don't need to see a $160 million man that's broken. That's all I got to say about that. This is the Hurry Up. Like, subscribe. You can find me in the Real Deal NFC East Roundup, 5:30s on Wednesdays, and Premium Takes on Fridays at 9 p.m. I'm out.